right, Willow Street and Union Road off-street parking.
This was deferred at your last formal meeting, and my understanding from the conversation I had with Connie subsequent to that was that the deferral was pretty much for any of you to go out and verify for yourselves what the situations were on those streets. I don't think staff has any additional information from you unless there are any questions.
Nobody asked me my opinion yet. They didn't.
So we're here for it.
Okay, I am uncomfortable with either of the changes. And I mean, that's, as you go out and look at them, I think that probably the best thing to do is to do nothing. That would be my personal opinion.
I disagree. I think Willow Street is an accident waiting to happen.
Well, we're here, are there any questions for Jeff? Because it's going to be on the consent calendar tomorrow night.
Well, I have a suggestion.
Yes.
I think we're going to make Willow Street one way.
I beg your pardon?
I think we're going to make it one way. It has easy access from cross streets and two streets going down. And then you could have parking on it and still be able to go over the top of that hill.
From what I can gather, if it's my turn to speak, is that the problem came up by one or two people on that street, and it came up because of some rather lengthy parking of a motor home type vehicle that made it difficult and narrowed that up. And there was somebody that was visiting over there. And I think that was really where the big problem came up. And because it was there over a period of time, one of the people farther down the street really was uncomfortable with it, which I could understand that. But other than that, I don't see where there was much of a problem. Now, that's how I understand it. That doesn't mean I'm right. Is that relevant?
That is relatively accurate.
So it was really a temporary thing, and it's been there for years, no problem.
Actually, Irvin, it was relatively accurate except for one thing. The letter that we received did not identify it as being because of a single vehicle of a certain type that was parked there. It was just presented to us as it's always a problem because of vehicles that are parked there. Okay. Otherwise, everything you said was accurate.
And there was a head-on collision on that
There was
road.
one when we looked at the accident record for the last 3 years. There was one collision.
So it is really a fairly narrow street, and if you are going up that hill, you cannot see a car coming. You cannot, if there's a car parked, and you have to pull, I mean, if you're going, I don't mind directions, but if you're turning off of that one between.
Yes.
Okay, if there's a car parked on the right-hand side, you have to go to the left-hand lane to get around that car. If somebody's come over the crest of that hill, I'm amazed there's only been one
But
accident.
I think there's no parking on one side of the street,
On
right?
one side, there's no parking.
No, but the road isn't wide enough to have two lanes.
Right. So you don't have a second road to negotiate, and with a little bit of caution, I mean, it's not an arterial street.
Are there other questions for Jeff? But the recommendation from staff is that we do prohibit parking as a safety issue on both streets. Is that around the clock or from would? I mean, would a ban on parking
Let's
from
put
8
it,
to
the
5
visibility issues
Don't
exist
change.
24 hours a day.
All right, fine. I got you.
They do, and we don't have any snow removal kind of ordinance in place.
Yeah, the
Well,
Union
it's-
Road, the Union Road request was from the Streets Department and the Police Department, Streets Division and the
Yeah,
Police Department.
and you can't see around there, even when there's not a car park. Okay.
We will deal with it tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. The next item is one that came up a couple weeks ago, and this was relative to Stephen, your vote, and Jay Seacott, when council.
Well, actually, Ernie, let me read you from what was supposed to be on the agenda, and I think it's somewhat indicative of how the meetings are run. I'm quoting from the transcript from April 2nd, Canner. But I think in the broader sense of how we vote and what's majority, and get back to that, what's the team player, I think it would be great to have that general discussion. talking about it in a broader sense than just J.C. Cog. Lehman, I don't have any problem with putting that on a work session. Bob, I would go for that, that's fine, and then there's question marks and some other verbiage that you can't tell who said that. So I think what was to be put on the agenda was the general discussion of who we represent, not just on J.C. Cog, but in general.
All right, let's just make this general. I think we're talking about actions that council have taken, a position on what is the duty of a council person when representing an issue that the council has already taken a stand on when they're representing the council.
We're not taking a stand, or in the general community, I think is the
No,
question.
no, not general community at all, because I think that.
Well, I think that was part of what I meant in the broader sense, and that was what the understanding. See, I think that's part of the problem, Mr. Mayor, is what you call a team player is what you say is a majority vote, and that's it. You're a team player if you go along with that majority vote. But I brought up the point of who do you represent when you make statements about Iowa Child, when you go to a press conference as the mayor of Iowa City? So I think that is some of the broader question that I'm willing to debate, and that's what I thought we were going to discuss here.
Well, we can talk about that, but I think that when we're talking about an official position that was taken by the council, one of us, as a council person, goes to any other organization to represent this body on a position that has already been taken, I think there's a certain expectation that whoever we send will represent the view of the majority of the council. They can state they disagree with it, but I think that when the vote comes, they must vote the way the majority of the council votes. I have no problem with discussion, but I think that there is an obligation on the part of every person sitting here, and this was brought to my attention by Corville council people sitting here at that meeting. Everybody was amazed at what's going on. You know, you people voted, your council voted 6-1 to do this, and then you send a representative to a meeting who votes against what his own council voted for.
Just so it should be very clear to the audience that's watching here and anywhere else, there's no legal obligation to vote the way the majority voted. In fact, my understanding, and the way I think most ordinary citizens would read it, that the reason we send 6 people to J.C. Cause instead of sending 1 person is to have that freedom. And actually, that's good you got that report back, because they knew that there was a minority opinion.
The reason we sent 6 people is because Iowa City represents the vast majority of J.C. Cog, and we're entitled to votes based on the number of people here. It has nothing to do with the number of opinions.
Right, so send 1 person to vote the full 6 votes. When the Supreme Court makes an opinion, there's a minority opinion, the majority holds. I think people are sophisticated enough, Ernie, to realize that the majority is the one that holds the day, but they hear a minority opinion, and that's good for Iowa City. So I think the reason we have 6 votes is not to say we all have to be in lockstep, and I hope you campaign on that when you run for re-election if you're going to do that,
Well, let
because
somebody else in the council
Well,
comment.
I will tell you, Steve, I don't care what you say at a council meeting about how you want to vote for something or against it. That is your right as a council person. Out in the public, I don't care what you say on any issue that the council is voting on. You are welcome to state your opinion 1,000,000 times if you want to. I don't really care about that. That is your right. But when you are representing this group on major money funding, and we have made a decision that that's where our money's going to go, or this money, whatever money it is, and then you don't grant us the ability to do that, I think you're doing the city a disservice. You're doing the council a disservice, because you are no longer able to, you should not be able to vote your minority opinion at that point, because you're representatives on that council. We have 6 votes. You are one of those votes. And it is your obligation to carry through with the council's majority opinion on that. Otherwise, I don't think you should be on J.C. Cog.
that's your concept of a team player is to
No,
stifle any
you're not- I
kind
don't
of
think you're
minority
ever-
position,
no.
Connie. I think that's what you're
And the
saying.
council-
And I want you to campaign on that
One
issue,
time.
Connie, and I think that's going to really
Oh, you're not gonna,
help you out.
I would suggest,
I
if you
think-
don't want to support the majority opinion, at a JCCOG meeting or any regional meeting we send you to, that you should not sit on that position.
I think that's a dire mistake, and I think that is something that's wrong with your philosophy of so-called team player.
I've never used that term. I have never used the term team
I
player.
agree with you, you haven't used the term, but you're in support of the so-called team player concept.
No, I'm
And I
not.
think
No, I'm not. I have
I think-
never objected to anybody having a difference of opinion than mine. I think you're wrong, but I don't object to it.
you have objected, you've cut off debate a number of times.
I will continue to do that when it's not going to change the discussion level.
And I think
Because
you've
I
got-
don't have all night to sit here, so you can end your diatribe.
Connie, I think that's how you do. I think that's fairly typical in trying to limit debate. I represent the citizens of Iowa City. Ernie,
You
one
represent
time,
Cannon.
Ernie, you said, who do you represent when we were trying to have a discussion on different ways of negotiating contracts? And you said, Stephen, do you represent labor? Well, I didn't answer you at that time, and I'll answer you now. I do represent labor, and I represent business and employees and the city's manager and the city attorney and the city clerk. My job is to represent all the people and not just the council majority. You have a right to vote as the majority, which you do, and you stifle democratic process through and through by not allowing minority opinions to be debated. I think you make a mistake, and you hurt the citizens of Iowa City when you take away my voice at J.C. Coggs.
Steve, I think it's very, and I have no problem at a JCCOG meeting, you're expressing your displeasure with how the council voted. Look, the council voted to do this. I absolutely disagree. I think it was a bad idea, but as a member of the council, I am bound to vote the way the council voted. I have no problem with it.
Ernie, why are you so afraid of, if my vote is a minority vote, why are you so afraid of that? What I'm more
Wouldn't
afraid
have
of...
had to have been a minority vote. That could have been a close vote, or that project wouldn't have been funded because you did not uphold the decision of this council. That could have happened.
And if it could have happened, that meant that other people agreed with me, and that's good for the county. What I think is even more dangerous, I think when we do an
You're not
open...
representing the county.
When we do an open discussion like is done at J.C. Coggs, I think it's great that people bring out divergent viewpoints. I think what's even more dangerous is the question of who do you represent when you make trips to lobby with the Chamber of Commerce? Who do you represent? Do you represent the business interest and your store downtown Iowa City? I think that's the question that people are asking. I think who do you represent when as mayor you're in support of Iowa Child? I think that's the question we ought to be asking in a more general sense. When I take a stand, it's all there at J.C. Coggs, and everyone knows about it. When you're doing your things, there's little backroom deals, and there's...
No, that's not true, Stephen. You
Come
know,
on now.
Stephen,
That's
I have to
called
listen to somebody else before I lose my temper with
Yeah.
this character. Go ahead.
I think the difference, Stephen, is at the point where we take a vote in here, it's city policy. And so on JCCOG, where we have a vote to vote on city policy, in my opinion, that's where however many votes we have are supposed to comply with city policy. I think what Ernie was saying, what Connie was saying at that point, I think council blew it. They shouldn't have voted this way. In addition to that, I think prior to, well, either at or prior to, I think it would have been your right and representing your constituents to essentially lobby the other entities of JCCOG. But at that point, in my opinion, you should have voted city policy. Your example of the Supreme Court expressing a minority view, that's their deliberative body. The justices don't then go on to some other place where they are voting. You know, I mean, that's the difference. I think you express your minority view when in the minority here, and you can express it minus the vote when you're not out someplace taking a policy vote, because in my mind that's what JCCOG is, a policy vote. Now we've got two council members that are on different sides of Iowa Child. Iowa City hasn't taken a policy vote on that, so I don't see them as having any conflicting interests there. The Chamber of Commerce, if we take a policy vote in here and the mayor or the city manager, then in my mind, they have to vote the city policy, the majority that was implemented. So that's my opinion.
And when it comes to legislation, it was one of those things like this year I brought to council and asked you for a policy vote on the bottle bill. It was one of the things that I felt that there probably was good support with, given our previous votes. However, if the policy had been not to support bottle bill, I certainly wouldn't have signed on to it at ECI COG, because my council would have spoken that that was not something that they wanted. Since this council said yes, I took it to the regional COG and asked them to consider it. They had a month to consider it, and they came back and it passed with the exception of one vote. And that county had chosen not to support it. But that vote, when I get out away from city council, when I vote on something like that, the first thing I'm thinking is, all right, how is my council going to approach this? How will they react to this vote? How would they want me to vote? It's not my personal opinion. It is, how would the city of Iowa City like to be represented on this particular issue?
Actually, Dee, I think you have more of a case there than a case with J.C. Cogs where there's 6 representatives. And I think, again, I would like to make the point that things that are done at J.C. Cogs are above board. I think that what's even more dangerous is people working on different issues and not knowing where they're coming from, and then voting certain ways. And I think that's the issue of who do they represent. Ernie, I think that's a good thing. Dee, I think when you talk in your campaign for city council about, I don't need a library because I'm an owner of a bookstore, I think that's very telling.
I did not ever say that. Excuse me, but you're putting words in my mouth.
That's what I heard at a forum that we had when it was asked if...
No way.
Hey, the question.
I'll quote you, but the point is, that is where you're coming from, and that's even more dangerous than someone representing a different viewpoint and going to J.C. Cogs and voting that. And if you're afraid of that, that's a pretty sad state of affairs.
It has nothing to do with fear. It has to do with policy of this body.
What's the policy that's harmed if there are 5 other people that are in agreement with something and one person brings up another point of view about money being spent from J.C. Cogs
I
to
didn't say
support the
anything
city?
about having the discussion. What I'm saying is the vote.
Right, well, how is that, you said you're not afraid, what was the term you used that you, in any case, why is there concern? I can't see why there's concern. If there are 5 other people that agree, or 4 other people that agree with the policy, it's not going to change that policy.
I think it was pointed out to you by what Connie was saying, was the fact that we are representing X number of people at J.C. Cog. That's why we have 6 votes. This was a money issue that was decided by this body at city council level, that we wanted to switch the funding. Now, we technically could have lost that vote had all the other people, members of the J.C. Cog, voted not to allow us to switch that. That's the fear. And this time it was 1 vote. Well, what's to say the next time we have a similar kind of thing happen and it won at council with 4-3.
I think...
And 3 of the 3 opposing votes are on the COG. So that 3 votes plus others. I mean, that is a funding stream, and we're required by state law to set our transportation plan at that meeting, and it is the long-range plan.
Let me ask you a question, Stephen. If your vote would have made the difference between the funding being transferred to Mormon Track extended and not being extended, would you have still voted no?
Well, let me tell you, Ernie.
Let me answer my question.
Let me answer the question, Ernie. I think one of
It's a yes
the
or no.
things about, no, it's not a yes or
Yes,
no.
it is a yes or no. If you
Ernie, I'm
voted
going
yes or no-
to answer it in the way I see fit, and if you don't want to accept that, that's fine.
In other words, you're not going to answer.
Why don't you just hold on, Ernie?
Go ahead.
J.C. Coggs is there to oversee the whole county we're part of the large urbanized cities in the Johnson County area. And if the J.C. Coggs board majority sees fit to deny funding for something that Iowa City majority wants, I think that's what it's there for. I would vote to not fund that because I think it's not in the best interest of the citizens of Iowa City. I was not convinced by the vote here in the city council, and I was not convinced by J.C. Coggs. But J.C. Coggs has the ability to put a check on that, and that's why it is set up there as an entity by the federal and the state government to have that kind of check, not to put a muzzle on people coming from different city councils.
But what you said then, that you would have voted against it even if it had meant the funding would have been transferred.
Correct.
Six of your council cohorts voted for it, and you would have, one person then would have overruled the wishes of 6 council people.
Actually, Ernie, it would have been, how many people are on the J.C.
I'm
Coggs
talking
board?
about the council.
No, how many people are on the J.C. Coggs board? Well,
That isn't the point.
no, the point is you're making a scenario that didn't happen. But
No,
if
it
the scenario did happen, that meant there was a majority of people on this board whose purpose is to oversee this money and see what's best for the whole area. Now, I would have agreed that it was not best for Iowa City, and if that scenario played out like you said, that meant the majority felt it was not best for the area, not the best use of these funds, which can be used not only to build roads, but can be used to do transit and to do bicycle enhancement and to do a host of other things, Ernie.
I hear you, I disagree.
That is one of your
You have a
things.
comment?
However, there was, when you take that scenario, you're taking it out of context because there are times that we have votes at J.C. Cog that have to do with funding streams for various entities. And if Iowa City's request for funding of the STP funds is denied, that just means the possibility that that pot of money is going to go to the other entities.
We sit there, 6 of us as Iowa City's representatives, and we've made a decision here. We aren't representing the county, we're representing Iowa City. That's our function, we're city council members.
Exactly.
And if we go there, and all of the entities that sit at J.C. Cog are lobbying for funding for their own little projects. And, you know, it may come to a point in time, Stephen, where that one vote means that we can't complete a project. But the wishes of the council at that point in time aren't being put forward because one person doesn't support the wishes of the council and forgets the fact that there's a Iowa City representative
You're
on
right.
that board.
You're right. And in another time period, it could be 2 Iowa City councilors or 3 Iowa City councilors who would choose to go that way, even though it passed by a majority of the council.
I'm thinking of a couple other places where I've seen some folks, a way that they've expressed their minority view. And if I felt at J.C. Cog that in my conscience, whatever, maybe, whatever the issue, just couldn't exercise the wishes of the majority of the council, then I think that I would ask for an alternate to go. You know, folks, I can't go, I can't do this, you're gonna have to send something else.
There's a whole lot of influences that are going on. We have people that are lobbying, we have staff people that are lobbying our representatives all the time. We have people that have been lobbying for this parking ramp on Burlington to our state or U.S. representatives. We have people that are lobbying as part of National League of Cities. We have people that are lobbying for the State League of Cities. We have city manager who's part of the chamber, doesn't vote, part of ICAD that votes. We have council members that are doing all these different things. And so we're out there with a million different things, giving our opinions. And again, there's no legal obligation. We've not seen that there's any legal obligation. I think there's moral obligations that we each decide who we're going to represent in all these different things and what is influencing us. And I think actually the place that's most above board about where we're coming from is an official public body. We're required by state laws to do meetings in a certain manner. And I think to vote is probably the most above board way of doing something where people see where you stand. And again, I would urge you to think about who you represent, and not just voting, but in all different things. And I think that's the main issue. You certainly have the votes to vote me off JCCOG, which is what you're apparently going to do.
If you're talking to me, I have not had those discussions with anyone. If you're suggesting that, I'm not quite sure what you mean by above the board. If you're accusing me of backroom deals or something like that, I'm highly offended by that.
Did you hear what I said, Ross? I said that we're all doing different things, representing different things at numerous places.
You're expressing your opinion. You're not implementing policy out there. You're not executing a contract on your own out there. That's a difference, and I'm very offended by that. If that's what you're applying.
I'm saying that everybody is working towards different goals in different ways. A vote is only one way to move towards that. And I think it's probably the procedures that are set up here are the most above board way to do it. And JCCOG's, a vote there is above board and very visible, and people can see where a person stands. And the city council can see where a person stands. And if they prefer not to have that, then they vote in the majority side, which seems to be prevailing pretty heavily. But to me, it's just ludicrous to say that 6 people going to JCCOG's all have to vote the same way, because then there's no purpose of having 6 people going.
But I guess we disagree with the purpose of, or we disagree with what it means to implement the policy in the city. We disagree.
Well, just let me suggest to you, and I agree, I think that every minority opinion needs to be heard, and you had the opportunity when we voted to change the funding to make your case to the council. And you did, and it was a 6-to-1 vote, and I think you exercised your obligation to vote the way you felt. And I think everybody respects that. I mean, all of us have been on the short end of votes once in a while. I think we generally respect each other's opinion as to why. But when we go to JCCOG, we're no longer representing ourselves individually. We are representing the actions of the city council. Now, that's the difference between your thinking of going to say to JCCOG and what I believe this city does. When we send people to JCCOG, they're there to represent the position that the city has taken. And the representation at that point is to the city. That doesn't preclude you or anybody else from making a statement, I totally disagree with what the city has decided to do. But as a representative of the city, I must uphold the decision that's made by the council. Now that, I believe, is the rub.
Well, you can certainly put that in as a council policy, that there's an obligation to vote that way. Maybe you can't. I don't know what the legal ramifications are of that, but you could try to do that. And I would disagree with it, and but I would follow the law. And I just want to
Official, not anything unofficial, but an official vote where you represent this council, are you willing to cast your vote in accordance with the majority of the council, the council wishes?
I'm not going to adhere to that, and I don't think anyone else should have to adhere to that.
And that's the question, guys.
Well, you know, I have real problem with that. I really do, and I'd like to suggest, and
you haven't said anything.
No, I'm going to try to ask a neutral question. I'm not sure if this is easy to do here, but that's going to be my attempt. So what I'm trying to sort out is, can we expect that whenever any of us go to represent Iowa City, and I mean, there is a very one of us go to different organizations as representatives of Iowa City, are we expected to vote the whatever way the city council voted?
If
If the majority of it, yeah.
Well, if there's a vote, but see, I think there are very, very few organizations that we go to that we have votes that the council has ever acted on.
Okay, all
I mean,
right.
tell me of another one.
Well, okay, the only one that I can think of right now is if you go to League of Cities, there's sometimes there are votes there.
Yeah, but most of the time, not issues that we've even voted on.
Well, okay.
We're talking about specific issues that this city has taken
Okay,
position
all right,
on.
I'll go along with that. So, okay, let's say specific issues that we have voted. It looks like it's the wish of the council that vote should be cast the way the majority of the city council voted.
And that's the point.
Okay, all right. Now, so then I have one other question, and again, in a neutral sort of way. Okay, now, when that happens, and by various going to different organizations, is there an obligation, or do we expect the person that made the vote at that organization to report back to the council how they vote?
We've never had to.
No, but would that be a reasonable thing to expect? If you take the city's official vote to some place and you vote, should the city council expect to have a report of how that vote was made?
Well, I think
That's
he does
why we
that.
put
Yeah.
minutes in the packet.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's very
That's
out.
That's it,
You know,
okay,
if
that
you
you
want
answered.
minutes of the CBB in there,
Okay.
we put those in there too.
That was the part that you filled in the spot that I didn't think. Okay, that's fine. That's the answer to my question. I'm sitting here listening, and I don't know if there's any action on the table, is there?
Well, the only thing is, I do believe that we need to have some understanding that people who represent the city on decisions that have been made by the city will vote in accordance with the majority of the council.
Yeah.
And this was brought up, obviously, by a J.C. action.
I brought it up because I was pretty floored.
I guess after I listened to this, when we go as representatives of the city, it looks to me, while we may not always agree with the vote, I think from what my feeling right at the second is that we should vote the wishes of, or the decision of the city council.
And I don't know how you can say it in any other way. We were transferring funding, but you have to, the very important thing is we're all there, different communities lobbying for the same pot of money. And we will reach a point in time, and we have. I've been on there for 3 years, and we had occasions where one vote did make a difference. And when you go there, you're one of 6 who represent Iowa City. We go through all the work here. The staff goes through the work. Sometimes there's already money involved. But we're lobbying for the funds, and each community is lobbying for funding for their own projects. So that's why normally that one vote isn't going to make a difference, but it could. And that's
I think the fact that before a vote is made, a person can state their violent opposition to making the vote.
Absolutely.
Yes, but I mean, I think it's right that if we go as city representatives, we probably should. That's just a gut.
we have to look at it.
I mean, I don't know if that's something that we should pass as something we are obligated to do. I don't know, but that's my gut feeling when I sort it out, that's what I'd have.
You're not willing to agree to vote, and I'm not saying discussions, obviously you can say whatever you think, but you're not willing to agree to vote the way the council has voted on J.C. Cog matters. And if
Ernie,
not-
again, I put this in the larger context of representation. If you're agreeable we had talked about, for instance, financial disclosures. Maybe we can reach a compromise. If you want to be a team player, you know, you take into account some minority positions. You have a minority position on Economic Development Committee. That's a team player. If you want to talk about compromise, I might be willing to compromise. If we throw a bunch of things into the pot and talk about ethics for council members, I'd be willing to talk about what you're asking. So we throw it all into the pot and talk about it, and have some really good discussion, and have some compromise and consensus. Because we don't have that. You have the majority, and that's it. And there's no incorporation of minority position. And that's the way it operates. That's fine. But if you're seriously asking about trying to come to a compromise, I'm willing to work with you and talk about that, Ernie, and throw all these other things into the pot, which I think are just as important about the larger sense, the ethical sense of who we represent. And I think it's appropriate for a legislative body to look at those things. I think those bodies have made those kind of rules for their members at different levels, and we can do that. And if you want to have that discussion, I'll do that.
I don't mind having that discussion, although perhaps we should have that some other time other than the council meeting.
No,
I don't think it's germane to what we're asking right now.
Well, what we're
at
asking
this
right
point.
now, and I think that it's important, if you really want your minority opinion heard at a JCCOG meeting, I believe that the council is going to tell you that you need to support the position of the council in your vote, not in your opinion, not in your discussion. But when it comes to vote, I think that you need to tell us you will do that. And if you don't do that, I'm going to ask the council that if they wish to replace you, we will replace you.
I think you do what you have to do, Ernie. I think that's a wrong position. I think if we have it in the whole context, again, of who we represent, I think it's appropriate to have that discussion.
Okay, what's the council's pleasure?
Well, I hear that you gave a choice to Stephen, and he's not willing to make a commitment, so I suggest that we replace him.
I agree. Do we have concurrence in that?
I'm going to have a couple comments.
Yes.
And I'm going to address these in the context of JCCOG, because I don't believe that you can take many of these group situations are fact specific. And but I'm going to address my comments to JCCOG. JCCOG is not a group of individuals, but I think you're right. And if you even look at their bylaws, you're appointed because you're a representative of a certain entity. You have no mechanism, Stephen is right, currently to require a council member to vote in accordance with your wishes. I don't see that there is that mechanism currently existing. I think you could create such a mechanism. That being said, if it is your desire to remove Stephen, there is a state code provision regarding removal of appointees, which I think we've discussed before in the context of board appointments. I think that this code section is likely addressed to that situation. We should probably comply with it in this one as well. And it requires a written notice, filing with the city clerk, opportunity by the appointee to request a public hearing, that kind of thing. So I think we need to take a few more steps in order to make that removal happen. If it is the expressed decision here of the city council to start that process, then I can go ahead and do that.
I agree. I mean, I just think Stephen, this is basically a no-brainer. I think you are, I think the developer said you were there as a representative of an entity, not as a representative of the audience here or the Johnson County, but as a representative of this body that sits here. That's what you go to JCCOG for.
Well, what I heard Eleanor say was slightly different from what you were saying, Ernie. I think that our appointments are as a representative of the entity. And again, I heard that there's no legal obligation
That's exactly
to vote that. So I didn't hear necessarily the same degree that you heard. And I don't think it's a no-brainer. I think there's sharp philosophical differences, certainly, between my position and the other majority position. And right now you have the upper hand, and it could change.
But you have the opportunity to make those mistakes as one vote in the council made that decision, you had your opportunity to make your points. You made your points, you did not prevail. You had your opportunity.
I think there's even one other thing here, and I think not only the point you just made, Ernie, I also think if it was just a case where you could not express your opinion at J.C. Cog, which is what we're talking about, and maybe others, and you could make your point, say, well, I'm going to vote yea or nay, I'm going to hold my nose when I do it. But I think that if we go to the representative of the city, I agree that that's probably an obligation we can. That's my gut feeling. I don't think.
Well, I don't support removing them because I don't think it's necessary. I think that I still hold firm that you represent, in that case, you're representing city policy. And I think it's a matter of if voicing your minority dissent, if you choose to do that in the future, I think that's probably making a political statement. I think it works in the reverse too. If you choose, if it's perceived that you're not implementing the policy of the city, then that's a political decision. The reason I say that is because I don't think it's, my experience so far is that I'm not looking at trying to make it mandatory that you vote that way. I think if a council member chooses not to implement policy, I think that's a statement in itself. So
I would agree.
If unless, did you have it? No? Okay. Well, I'm going to make a suggestion. I think we had a really good discussion. I would propose that we put this off for a month and maybe at a month later work session, bring it up and see once where it is, and then maybe this.
What would change? Philosophy?
I mean, I think we had some really hard-hitting discussions. And I don't know if this is what we came prepared to do. That's fine. If we did, then maybe we want to go on with it. I don't see, do we want to start the process as elder? Are we ready to do that? That elder proposing have to do? I'm not.
I think I think one of the things that you should consider or may want to consider is formalizing the policy that it sounds like a majority would have with respect to votes at J.C. Cog specifically.
How would we go about it?
Well, I think you'd do a resolution.
And how would you
I mean, you
enforce
have the right to establish rules for yourself.
How do you enforce it then?
Well, that's the next step. You know, I don't think we can assume that once that is a formal policy that it will be violable. But in the event it is,
Well,
then you would have the removal option.
maybe this is applicable, maybe it's not. I mean, right behind me is an example of, maybe that wasn't a formal policy, but it's against the wishes of the majority of council, so I don't know how that adds to the mix or not. But.
Would the council concur in having the staff draw up a resolution that would cover the situation that we're talking about?
Yes.
Not at this point.
No.
Well, the resolution would just require that if you're said as the representative of the city of Iowa City, you will vote to support the actions of your council.
I would want some time between our discussion tonight before I would decide on that.
Yeah,
Well, the resolution would have to come at a formal meeting.
No,
so
but
we
I
should have-
understand, I would want to sort of think about this a little bit before I would vote yes. I would vote no tonight, right now, but that doesn't mean that if I had time to sort this out a little bit more, I might change my vote, I don't know. But if I have to vote tonight, I'll vote against.
We're not voting.
Yeah.
Actually,
Well,
Mike, you asked what would change a delay. If there was true sense of trying to reach a compromise, I think for me to sit down with Ernie, with perhaps a mediator, to see if there can be a solution that could work out that would be to the benefit of the council as a whole, I'd be willing to do that.
I'll sit down with you, but I don't think we need to meet.
I think I do, from my point of view. I think I need that.
In any event, the only, there is, from my perspective, there is no compromise in voting against when you represent this council. There is no compromise that will allow you not to support what this council has passed. And that, if that's the compromise you're looking for, then there's no point in sitting down, because I think that's,
Well, again,
That's your
Bernie, I said I'm willing to compromise if we bring in other issues too, and so perhaps there is room to negotiate on that.
what do you guys want to do?
I would look at a resolution to have it in place and let people think about it and bring the resolution to council, say, first meeting in June.
How many, I do have a problem with the resolution telling how people will vote. Telling people how they should vote. But I have problems with the whole thing of not supporting council decisions. I really have more problems with that. How many?
I don't have a problem with not supporting a council decision.
It's your
Personally, that's fine.
Oh,
But when you are representing an action of the council, I don't think we have the ability, or should have the
Well,
ability.
I didn't say that, that's what I mean.
I think we want to narrow we would want to focus on council appointments to particular bodies.
Right,
And we can't just, we
absolutely.
have to speak
Well,
in some
we're
specific
burning
terms.
up a lot of time, but we're not getting anywhere we want to do.
Well, I'd be willing to look at an ordinance that would require us to vote council policy in specific situations, such as J.C. Cog.
It's really a shame that we have to do that.
Yeah, it is. Is that a big job, Eleanor?
No, I don't think so.
Why don't you go ahead and get something at least to talk about? Okay, CDBG allegations. Pardon?
Take another break. We're emotionally drained.
Allocations, I guess. Everybody is. Steve?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess.
Anybody want pop or water? Diet?
Mr. Mayor, at your April 17th meeting, you had a public hearing on the annual action plan for fiscal year '02. And the annual action plan is the tool that we use to implement our funding for the Community Development Block Grant Program and the Home Program. The public hearing was opened and closed at the last meeting. And for the meeting tomorrow evening, we've got the final passage of the annual action plan on your agenda. And we do need to pass the plan as is or in any amended format as you see fit, so that we can get it sent to HUD by 5th May. And you have requested that we bring this up at the work session this time. So.
Yeah, is there discussion? We think we're all pretty much aware of what's been proposed. And we had the public hearing 2 weeks ago. We're going to be acting tomorrow night. Is there discussion and questions you've got for Steve?
Questions or
Comments?
comments? I'm going to be proposing an amendment in the housing funding to delete the funding for the Foxborough project and fully fund the Greater Iowa City Housing Fellowship and city housing on the peninsula property, and put the remaining dollars into the Habitat for Humanity.
I'm not going to support that, although I'd like to see the housing, both of those people have more money. I'm not willing to decrease the funding to Foxborough Fund. I think it's already been staged and well planned, and I'm not willing to change that at this point. I don't have my notes with me, but one of the things that bothered me with the economic development projects was money being allotted to increase salaries. And I have problems with that in a young business. That money was being used to increase salaries. I just have a problem with it, and that's why I want to get rid of it. I don't know where else we can get the money for the Iowa City housing and the Habitat for Humanity and the Peninsula project, but I hope there's somewhere else that we can get it besides that particular project.
Well, I'll state my reasons tomorrow night for the public on
question or a comment. I was talking to staff about economic development, and what I got out of the conversation was that the basic thing of economic development is to get people from low-level wage jobs to livable wage jobs, in a sense. That this is, in a sense, the proposal from Ruby's Pearls is the basics of what it's meant for economic development money from CDBG and Home Fund.
Job creation and job retention are the two goals, one of the byproducts that the city staffs would like to see and the commission would like to see are the living wage jobs.
And this Ruby's Pearls proposal does that in going from $7 an hour to $9 an hour.
They're proposing to retain the two jobs and possibly create one more. So that would be the basis for the funding, and that's what we tie them to through the agreement. The living wage portion of that is something they've added to it.
One thing I might propose is a different amendment tomorrow, and want to throw this out to the council and to you. For the Foxborough project, it seems that the critical level is $234,000, but we see that it's only 8% private financing. So I'd like to see that raised to the equivalent of Metro is up to about 12%, I think is what we figured out. And see if we can perhaps require that from Foxborough, or perhaps ask both of them to go up. Seems to me a compromise would be $50,000 from Foxborough and $50,000 from Metro Plain, and give that to the greater Iowa City Housing Fellowship, which wouldn't be their full $200,000, but it would cut that deficit in half that they were asking for.
Got my number here for
And I know it makes it more difficult, but maybe we could hear from the developers if it's still doable.
Tell me to get that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Metro Point is about 17% privately funded.
17, so maybe even ask Foxborough to go even higher.
Go higher.
A privately funded. Right now, they're at about 8% of the project.
So what you're saying is decrease their funding that much more, requiring them to have the project go forward, it would have to have more private dollars into it.
Right, to go up to 17%. Could you tell us tomorrow what that, if they go from 8 to 17%, what that would be approximately, and what we would say?
How much time do you want to give?
Well, or tomorrow would be
Okay.
fine.
Well, then, I mean, tomorrow night, apparently, we're going to have some discussion relative to, you brought up,
I'm gonna,
Greater Iowa City Housing Fellowship. We're going to have some discussion about Habitat for Humanity. There's going to be some discussion relative to Foxborough, and there apparently may be some discussion relative to Ruby's Pearl, or at least economic development. Is there other issues that we want to talk to Steve about?
I'm coming back basically with what you said.
I have just some wording that I might as well tell you what I'm thinking about on the economic development funds. We've not been looking at micro-enterprise startup businesses previously. So this is a new venture for all of us. That means the commission, the staff, and council. When I started looking at the HUD requirements for economic development funds, it specifically talks about the feasibility of the project. And obviously, when we're talking about $125,000, we want to be sure that we're putting it into a feasible business. In talking with staff and so forth, it might take staff with an outside consultant to look over business plans to see if this is a feasible project before we allocate funds. So what I thought I would suggest tomorrow night is that we fund the recommended micro-enterprise businesses subject to the feasibility study that they are good, solid candidates to make a success, and then not release any funds to them until that has been completed.
I wasn't involved with near all of the negotiations and efforts that this commission put in, but I was involved, I observed a fair amount. At this point, I don't think it's perfect, and I don't think it's ever going to be perfect. And I would suggest that we accept it as it is, and if we want to make more changes and different changes, I think we do that after this season is over, and accept it as it is. That's my proposal.
Well, staff has to go through a feasibility anyway, because that's the HUD guideline.
We would do due diligence with those projects.
But I think that they've done it.
That's why I say fund them, and if it's a feasible project, then we will release the funds.
I am very much against changing the rules after the game is just about over.
It isn't changing the rules because the HUD guidelines require us to do this.
Well, then if you're not changing the rules, then we don't have to do anything, because the rules are already in place.
All we're saying is that we need to have a feasibility, that we know that it can succeed with the capitalization and so forth.
I think that
Available.
I think that these people have gone out of their way to get the best, better than I will, and maybe even better than anyone else on this bill, and have expertise in this area, and I think they've done that, and I think to grab them by the ruff of the neck and say, hey, we just don't like you, so we're going to put some more rules on. I don't think that's the right way to do it.
I don't think we're trying to do that, too. One thing I want to just mention, and then I think we can have this discussion tomorrow night, but as I think we're all aware, the Greater Iowa City Housing Fellowship proposal was funded 100% by the state. It was also rated, I think, our #1 priority by our own committee. It was funded to a lesser degree. The state funding for the Greater Iowa City Housing Fellowship, the degree of funding from the state depends on the degree of funding from the city. So if we fund them at a lesser amount, they will also not receive the full funding that they have received from the state. Their plan, as I understand it, is to purchase and build 19 lots, or 19 houses on the lots in the peninsula property, which I think, at least it has been for some time, a very high priority for this council to see that project start out and be successful. So I think if between now and tomorrow night, if that's a priority for us, we need to figure out how we can come up with the money that it takes to see that one fully funded. I do think it's definitely the best interest of the community to get that project off and running. So
I guess I have a question. Did I not understand, or am I having a senior moment here, that basically they agreed to accept the way things were done? But that's not.
well, I think everybody accepts what they've given. I mean, what choice?
No, I mean, accept the outcome of the whole thing.
Well, everybody accepts the outcome, because that's all they get.
I was thinking I saw a statement of support of the different process that were going on. But maybe I'm wrong.
We got a pretty long letter from them prior to the public hearing, pointing out to us how important it was for them to receive 100% funding so they could maintain their level of funding from the state, and also pointed out that the properties they wanted to develop were in the Peninsula Project, which has been a pretty high priority for the city.
Okay, so in other words, if the only problem is finding the part that we didn't fund somewhere else in the city budget.
Or somewhere.
150, 190,000.
198,000. Anyway, something to think about between now.
Okay, but so in other words, that is really the only problem that we have. If that can be found someplace else, then everything's.
No, I just mentioned that from my perspective. The council may not share that perspective.
Okay, okay. I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'm saying that's the difficulty as you see.
That's one of the problem, but I do think from my perspective as well, that the funding will be found somewhere in the CDBG monies. I'm not interested in going into the general fund or something else.
But if there are other housing funds someplace else.
Or some, if we can work something out or be creative, I think it's a project.
And then if that was the case, then would we be willing to accept the rest of it as it is?
Well, it's up to the rest of the council. I mean, there's 7 of us here.
I mean, I'm
We'll
just.
vote and talk about it tomorrow.
Stephen?
I have a question. Yeah, we do have a letter here from Foxborough suggesting other revenue sources. Are these realistic, affordable housing funding pool, HCDC projects that will not proceed, loan repayments to HCDC?
The Affordable Housing Funding Pool, we budgeted $150,000 for FY02. As the Housing and Community Development Commission has already reviewed those guidelines, the project wouldn't qualify for them because they're for out-of-cycle projects, which is one of the criteria. Another one of the criteria was that they're at least 25% privately funded, so it wouldn't qualify for that. And even if we did bend those rules, I think you would need to talk to Charlie and Mary Ann about whether they can even make that work, because it's my understanding that that's a loan, and that may not work in their debt structure. As far as money's recaptured, we've got $20,000 that we're kind of waiting on to see if Old Brick spends. And right now, that's the only one that we may recapture, and that's $20,000. And as far as program income, we budgeted every dime we have. We haven't even budgeted contingency this year because Old Brick may not go, and if we got that money back, that would be $20,000, and that's less than 1% of our overall budget. So we would kind of like to keep that for contingency. So we budgeted everything we have.
Okay, and another question about economic development funds. The City Council Economic Development Committee requested funding for a year-round revolving fund, some loan, some grant. Could HCDC do the same thing, which they would have year-round, set aside if council agreed to
Council
that?
authorized the authority for the commission to do it, I suppose. They could.
Was that considered at all as a possibility?
I don't have that information.
I mean, was it considered by HCDC at all?
It was not considered by HCDC.
How would that proposal?
That was Tim's wake-up call.
Let's keep that phone.
So what would initiate that? I assume council could initiate that. Could HCDC initiate that?
I know that on their May discussions, they want to talk about the Economic Development Fund proposal. What those discussions are going to be, I can't tell you what they have.
Stephen, I think they could have recommended the funding for the 2 economic development projects that they sent us. They could have recommended, I'm sure, that they establish their own fund to put that money in the fund. I mean, they could have done that, couldn't they?
Yeah, they could have done that, but that isn't something.
Allocated instead.
Yeah, and that's generally not in their purview to do. It's-
Right, but they could have asked it.
And maybe they will.
Okay.
Okay, well, one question I will be asking tomorrow night, and I don't know if anybody has the answer, is where can we get the money there with the housing fellowship for the Peninsula project? That's the question. What are the possibilities for getting that money? Where could we get it besides out of the air?
Well, you have a lot of, Steve's sneering at me, you have a lot of resources at your control.
One place we can't get it is a general fund.
Well, I know, but I think it's important that we have that money. And so I want to explore ways that we can get it.
Well, I think we need to be prepared to talk about that.
I know.
Bring us your ideas tomorrow night.
I'm asking people for ideas.
I'm
asking that.
If I had any, I would put them up to begin with.
We have to have that.
Again, we will need to approve the plan.
Right, we do need to approve something tomorrow night. The way it is, amend it, however, we do need to approve something tomorrow night.
Please.
All right, we will do that.
Thank you.
All right. Eleanor? Time for break. Would you kind of walk us through the proposed changes to the alcohol ordinance and decide what we're going to do with that?
Someone come up with the directed, asked for written comments from licensees, and also met with those licensees interested in meeting with us on April 19th. As I told you in the memo, we got written comments from 2 and 6 individuals representing 4 establishments were at the meeting on April 19th. And I'm looking now at section 457 on limitations of sales, because that's the only thing that we were focusing on. Number 2, you will see that we added to the end of that, or an unlimited number of servings for free. It was brought to our attention by some of the bar owners that the practice of other bar owners is to offer an unlimited amount, not for a specific price, but for free. And we thought that made sense to add that. You can't give all you can drink for $1. It doesn't make sense that you should be able to give all you can drink for free. On the third one, this is about increasing the proportion of alcohol, increasing the amount of alcohol in a drink. And the questions we got along those lines were, well, what if I serve a short that has 1 shot in it, and I serve a tall that has 2 shots in it, but my short, and these are drinks I always sell, but my short is $4 and my tall is $6. Is that not okay because it's not a proportional increase in the price? And our response to that was, that's not an increase in the price of a drink that you, or increase in the volume of alcohol in a drink that you're already serving. That's not like making a special, okay, come in tonight and I'm going to give you a short, this size glass, which normally has 1 shot in it, and I'm going to put 3 in for the price of 1. So we had given them that response. We did consider removing the word proportionally from that provision, and it makes the whole thing meaningless. So we didn't do that. We just tried to focus on the drink, and that will be our interpretation of it. Number 4, which is the price, reduction in prices from that normally charged, has been eliminated at the council's direction. Number 5, now number 4, this is the out-of-site sales one. We have amended that to focus on the serving and the delivery of the alcohol as opposed to the selling of the alcohol. If we said you're prohibited from selling more than 2 drinks to one individual, you'd have to have a sale, a cash transaction each time you sold, for each 2 drinks, and that didn't seem workable to us from the bar owner's perspective. Yeah, that's it, for the reason that you couldn't run a tab, you couldn't buy drinks for the whole table, that kind of thing. So, and again, that fits with the purpose of this section is to deliver it to people you know to be of age. Then the last section was the private event section. And as I think I told you the last meeting, we removed catered from that as it didn't provide much to that since we're only talking about on-site sales anyway. And we have defined private event to one that is restricted to a particular group or persons, and there has to be a means by which to identify those persons. That could be in a number of different ways: a separate room, a separate space, tickets, wristbands, that kind of thing. And I think I gave you the example of the small tavern owner who said, I do birthday parties, but I'm just one room and I have no place to segregate them. So, and we changed the effective date to August 1st, 2001, so that we will have the same amount of time for discussions with the police department about enforcement and education that we would have had we done 3 readings already.
All right, how will we handle this tomorrow night? Do we amend the original, or do we defeat the original and then replace it with this?
Yeah, it's on your
amended?
agenda. You see that you've got an A and B on your agenda, and we put them out that way specifically. So A,
Number 16.
is it 16?
Number 16.
Right? We've got both of the ordinances on there. They have the same title, and I think it's just easier for the record to get rid of the first one if you're so inclined, or to vote on the first one.
First one, second consideration, if we choose not to accept that, we'll vote no. And then
Right.
item B then would be a motion to adopt the ordinance as it has been amended and rewritten, and that would constitute the first reading of the ordinance.
Right.
Do we all understand that? Are there questions for Eleanor? I cannot believe it's the first time we've ever talked about alcohol rather than question. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Andy.
I'm just gonna throw one thing.
We almost got by without one.
Put her down. Okay, just to show how ridiculous all this is. So now we have somebody who goes into the bar and orders, let's say 2 pitchers of beer, or maybe it's a big table, maybe it's a big table this size, and they order 4 pitchers of beer and 10 glasses or whatever.
Wait,
Now-
one person.
Well, then the bar owner has to, deliver it to the table. I don't have any problems with that.
All right.
So they deliver it. And then 4 kids come in and sit down. And I mean, to me, this whole thing is ridiculous because we're not going to stop anybody from drinking this now, right? Because they're going to sit down at the table and they're going to grab a beer and they're going to drink it. So what are you really accomplishing here?
Penny.
But a lot of harassment for
Penny.
people who aren't breaking the law.
Biggest thing, well, there's no harassment if you're not breaking the law. They come deliver your drinks, so they always, but that's not harassment. The thing you really accomplish is when you let someone in your bar who is underage or intoxicated, you are assuming responsibility for that person because there are civil penalties that we will be able to enforce against the bar owners that heretofore we have not been able to do.
The civil penalty.
The guy who came up and told us he had 5 people coming up, 4 of age and 1 minor. What am I going to do, turn them away? I got 4 good customers. Yeah, you either turn them away or you accept responsibility for what happens to the one who isn't of legal age. And by letting them in, they accept responsibility for which we now would have civil penalties.
We did convey to the licensees that we spoke to anyway, because we were going through these hypothetical situations, what if, that, I mean, there are certainly ways around these specials restrictions, and that what we told them is our understanding from the council was that if these things don't have any impact, that you'll look at other things, most likely 21 minutes.
But the civil penalties are the real dramatic change.
And I support the civil
I do
penalties.
too.
But you can't buy 3 drinks, but you can make 4 trips. Buy 2 drinks.
You can buy 20 drinks and have the bartender serve them.
Yeah, you can. And if you're 21, that's not against the law to go to a bar and buy 20 drinks. But if you're 19, it is. Well,
You guys are allowed to buy any if you're 19.
that's what I just said.
Yeah. Well, if we wait until we get a silver bullet, there will be 150 councils later, we'll still be talking about it. Any other questions for Eleanor?
I don't understand, can you explain to me how this changes the concerns that were brought up about private parties and bars being able to call almost anything a private party or offer a fraternity night every different night?
I don't know that it addresses those concerns, and frankly, I don't think we can. I think that we'll just have to see how it works, if it's abused. I think the intent was to provide some additional definition. So what we would be looking for is that there was some means to restrict access to a certain group of people, but if a particular fraternity has a private party at a particular bar every night, I don't know how to deal with that.
Unless you wish to define the type of events that would be permitted, wedding receptions, birthdays, unless you want to get that particular.
And I don't know how, where you draw those lines, and you'd have to have that discussion.
So
How you
what-
enforce that and identify it.
So could this happen? What if the bar says, okay, tonight's going to be a Mardi Gras private party. You can pay $1 and get into the private party.
Well, that's not limited to any particular group or person.
No.
It's not.
Yeah, you have to get $1 to get in. You have to become a member of the club to get in.
Possible abuse, we'd have to look at each situation on its own facts. But again, I don't know how to draft around that.
I know that. That's what
You know?
that's what I point out. There's no way to draft around it. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those, you're just going to have to see what.
I can assure you, we will see resourcefulness.
Thank you.
And we aren't going to talk about it here.
Thank you. Appreciate that tonight. It's getting too late for that one.
Okay, PCRB, we met with the PCRB board less than 2 weeks ago, and as we're all aware, the sunset clause for the PCRB is, I believe, is it the 1st of August, Marion? Sunset clause.
Sunset clause.
And we need to decide what direction we want to go. I think that the majority of the council indicated at our meeting that we would like to see the PCRB continue. There's some disagreement or different opinions as to what their actions are going to be limited to, or the scope of their actions. We need to decide how we want to handle this. I think there's a time for us, if we would like to have a brief discussion, indicating to staff some of what we would like to see, that we could have some sort of report in 2 weeks, which we could look over and then forward to the PCRB for their comment.
I think there's 2 issues here, and I will give you an example if you push me, and I'll be glad to do it. I'd rather not. I think there's 2 issues. Are we going to renew it? I think that PCRB has indicated on their own that they want to make some changes, and I think that's a separate issue, the changes and whether we do it. I think we ought to go ahead and decide we want to renew it, and then set up the process after that to do it, because they have other things that they have to do. They're short, they need the vacancies, I believe, they can continue on with that and then go from there. I think really the only thing we should be addressing is, are we going to continue it? Is it going to have life after the 1st of August? I would strongly support it, and then at another time, I think we should sit down after this, they get the board put together, and then negotiate what changes we want to see. That's what I would propose.
Sounds good to me.
We get to our agreements, we continue on.
I'll agree.
Well, I don't think there's disagreement as far as us continuing the PCRB. If we have any notions of making any substantive changes, I think that they need to be on notice that we're thinking about changes. We need to put ourselves on some sort of a time frame that if we renew the PCRB, whether it's eliminate the sunset clause or renew the ordinance for 1 year or whatever, I believe we need to set some sort of time frame for us to address the issues and make whatever changes that we agree with the PCRB should be made.
I would go along with that. I think our schedule, our work schedule here has been very heavy, probably will for the next month or two. I would say a month, 45 days, that'd be fine. But I think the idea is renew it, get that out of the way, and then go on.
I'm not sure. I agree that we should renew it. I don't really think it should be renewed in the format it's in now, and I certainly don't have any desire to give them the power to make police policy. I have real problems with that. I think that comes from us, or from, whatever, but not from a commission or committee, whatever they are. But I'm willing to continue, because I think there's a feeling out there that people need to have a place to go if they feel they've been treated badly by the police. And that's kind of the latest book in the country, that everybody thinks they're being treated badly by the police. And there are people who are being treated badly by the police. So I do want something in place that people can go to, although they can always come to us for that too. But I think they feel better not going to a public body like this. So I'd like to see it in place, but I'm not sure. Maybe somebody has some idea. I don't have any idea on how to do it, but I do want to change it. So I hate to just make a blanket policy about keeping it and going to a future date, because when you say you're going to keep it, that makes them feel it's going to be just the way it is.
Well, I think we should make it very clear, at least from my perspective, that I would personally like to see some changes made, but I believe the VCRB is something that should remain in place. I think we may be able to change it somewhat, but it should remain.
And I think we will see it remain in place there, because it has votes to stay, but its function is I think, what we're talking about right now. I favored several weeks ago, as I do now, that it should function like a board of adjustment. And I agree with Connie, I don't want to see them setting place policy. But I feel the board of adjustment is, on call.
I think that there's a possibility of a fairly lengthy and substantive discussion of what this board is and how much it will change. I think there's a lot of input that can be put in here. I disagree with some of the things that I think I'm hearing you say, and I would be real happy to defend it, but it will take some time to do it. And I'm not ready to do that now, but at the same time, it's still whatever the majority feels. I can bring you stuff that I've pulled up and come across that I think this is a wonderful place. This Police Citizens Review Board is a wonderful safety valve for this community. I think it's very beneficial to the citizens. I think it's equally as beneficial to the police department, even though the police chief and I have some very strong disagreements about it.
Okay, I think we're all agreed that we do want to continue. How do we want to proceed as far as making or discussing changes to it? I think that the PCRB is like, and I don't disagree that it has a certain value, but I look at, and not just local, I look at boards and commissions and whatever, whether they be local or state, and many times they kind of take on a life of their own, and I think it's important that the council tell these folks, whether it's the Planning and Zoning Commission, which I guess is established by law, or the Historic Preservation Commission, what we expect from those folks, and give them some guidelines. Obviously, I think that there's interest on the part of some very, very sincere people on that board to expand their scope, and I personally do not think I'm interested in doing that. But when do we want to discuss this?
Okay, are we going to divide this up into two parts?
Well, I think that we have consensus that we will extend the VCRB. Now, it's going to be a matter of how long we'll extend it for, and my understanding is there may be some problems. My personal preference is to extend it for a period of time that would require us to act in a timely fashion. But I don't think we can do that.
Why?
Because of appointments that are coming up. Marion, is it possible, for example, the sunset clause is the first day of August. Is it possible to move that sunset clause to?
You can amend that section of the code and amend the sunset clause if you're so inclined.
Is that going to present a problem if we extended the sunset clause for 90 days to give us time to amend the ordinance?
Yes. No, are you asking in relationship to the appointments? Randy, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Well, right now, the appointments, we would advertise in June and make in July. Now, if you're going to extend this 90 days, that allows certain options and discretion that you would need to make. I know certainly that's one thing the PCRB is very concerned about, is would you advertise it at the typical time in June to make the appointments in July when the person doesn't know what type of board they would be applying to, the function, the scope? Would you consider, I know there was a proposal to extend those terms, but by extending them, you have some other issues involved with ordinances and resolution. The third option would be simply advertising, realizing that, note that in the advertisement, and the individuals then would apply for the full term, and then depending on the results of the discussion and the decision of the council, they would then choose to remain on or resign. Those are all options available to them.
Could I offer something here? And I would suggest that we vote on it and say we're going to extend it for another 4 years.
I'm not willing to do that until we make whatever changes that we feel are necessary.
Well, then at that point, we make a change.
We need to decide what the function of the board is going to be. for a
Okay,
second time.
so then I think that
And it's only fair that we're going to advertise for applicants for the board that they know exactly what they're being appointed to.
Okay, so then in that case, then I would like to set up a rather lengthy work session to go over that, because I
That's
would...
unavoidable.
Pardon?
Unavoidable to say. And there's no way that we cannot have a
Are you being facetious, Councilman?
All right, we're not going to get anywhere on this tonight, obviously. I think the consensus are we will extend it. I would like you to think about it, though, as far as the length of time. Well, obviously, Mary, we're not under the gun. If we're going to extend this, we need to decide whether we want to do this for a short period of time to require us to take some action, or whether we want to do it for a longer period where we don't have...
Typically, we would advertise in June and appoint in July, so you would have certainly another work session if you're so inclined.
Tell you 2 weeks from tonight what we're going to do.
That's
Is
fine.
that all right?
How much time are you scheduling for?
No, I'm not saying that we schedule making the changes in the ordinance 2 weeks from tonight, that we schedule to decide how long we're going to extend the ordinance, whether it be, my personal feeling is that if we extend it 3 months, then we obligate ourselves to make those changes to that ordinance, rather than letting it go on indefinitely.
I doubt whether, I think the changes will probably take longer.
It can't possibly take longer than 3 months.
No, they won't. Well, but you don't have to.
We have 5 months now.
I don't...
June, July, May, June, July, August, September. We got 6 months.
We got June, July, and
We
August.
got May. May starts tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay?
May, June,
July, August.
No, you don't have August. It's sunset.
Extend 3 months, you got 6 months to do it.
Okay.
Anybody have anything for council?
One
Mike,
quick thing.
yes.
On our work session, we used to have timing set, and now it appears like we come at 6:30 and leave 6:30 the next day. I think if we start at 6:30 and allow a specific amount of time for each subject, at least we show some form of...
You forgot why we quit doing that. Because we'd finished something early and we couldn't move on.
At least it's more organized if we've got a schedule.
We don't keep it anyway.
And we could talk on one item for 3.5 hours. And if we limit ourselves, I think we could be more efficient.
Sweetie, it's not going to happen.
Okay, I have one thing.
All right.
Request
Don't start up with me.
on the work schedule, discussion about sidewalks.
Oh, good idea.
Anybody else want to talk about sidewalks?
I do.
Just
All right.
sidewalks, just...
Nice, rolling ones.
I understand.
You understand, you get There are
Yeah,
several
replacing
different things, surfaces on them, where they should be, where they shouldn't be, several different things like that.
I just hope you don't want to put sidewalks on a closed street.
Anybody else?
Me?
Anything else, council time?
It's been fun.
We haven't done yet.
Hold it,
I
Eleanor.
have 3, I'm sorry, quick things. The question was asked at an earlier meeting whether the city could file a HUD complaint regarding access at one of our funded buildings. Our preliminary research says likely not, as we wouldn't have any standing. The city, as a governmental entity, would not be an aggrieved person. That's the preliminary information we're getting on that. Number 2, I'll get you a memo on the court's decision in the U.S. West versus Corrigal case, which we were helping fund, as a number of cities were. And the smoking in restaurants thing, we're still working on how we're going to get that information.
The wetlands information, we were going to get a memo on wetlands.
Yeah, staff is still working on that.
I have one comment. Can you check the legality of putting together a video of what is required in the law so we can video monitor stop signs, et cetera, with videotape or whatever it is, and enforce the law if it's broken.
You're the only one interested in doing that.
I don't think that's true. I think a lot of people are interested in doing that.
Really?
I don't think the state law will let you do it.
Well, so in other words, what I'm saying is, could you check, would you be willing to check that out, see what is not permitted, what is permitted, what is not permitted, and what would have to change so we can do it?
If the council wants me to, sure.
Yes, I think they do.
You know,
Moving around,
so but if we can't do that, then
this recycle. I got a bit of
I have a really good one.
this is blue.
it's really, yeah, we just had a go.
Blue.
bragging rights. When this world is in the condition that this world is in, and people are suffering everywhere, can we say boldly, listen to my words, we have the last prophet, we have his last message, and we are doing nothing to bring the message to humanity? I want you to think about that. He is the last. This Quran is the last message. Then who will bring the message to 500 million people in the Western Hemisphere who don't know anything about Muhammad or the religion of Islam? Don't you tell me that you believe in him as the last servant or the last messenger, and then you have not taken his mission on your shoulder, then you are no longer of him. Why did the prophet say, 3 generations after me will no longer be of me? We went in pursuit of wealth and power, and we became corrupt. And the Western man helped our corruption, destroyed the caliphate, and we helped him. Now we are a divided ummah. Why did the prophet say that a sign of the last days would be that the sun would rise from the west? The west? The west? He didn't say a candlelight. He didn't say 100,000 watt bulb. He said the sun would rise from the west. You think about that. Not the moon in its brightness, not the star, but the sun would rise with all of its majesty from the west. Why did heard the footsteps of Bilal going into paradise ahead of his own. Where in that is the mission of the African or the Bilalian or the black man? What is your destiny? What is your mission? I'm going to quote a few things from the Torah, then the Injil, and then the Quran, and we'll call it a day. In the book of Daniel, I've been down for a whole year, I got a lot of stuff stored up in me. I haven't had nothing to do but think and read and study and pray. But I'm not going to bore you today. I don't know. Brother Imam, I'm so honored and happy that you're here. I just can't tell you that you would honor me just with your presence. I mean, I love this man. I can't help what anybody thinks. I have loved him since we were young boys together. We had our disagreements, but that has never broken my love for him. And those of you who understand, that man has a mission, a big mission. More on that later. But he and I will be together. Not for evil, but for good. Not for hatred, but in love. Look at this prophecy in the book of Daniel. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. The image whose brightness was excellent stood before thee, and the form of it was terrible. The image's head was of fine gold, its breast and its arms of silver, its belly and its thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet part of iron and part of clay. And thou sawest till a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands. It smote the image upon its feet that were of iron and clay and broke them to pieces. Then were the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold broken in pieces together, and they became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. And this vision troubled Nebuchadnezzar. What does it mean? None of his soothsayers could break it down for him. So Daniel came. And Daniel said, oh yes, this represents 4 kingdoms. You are King of Kings. Oh, he really laid it on the king of Babylon. You're the King of Kings. The whole earth and its people are under your authority and words. You are the head of gold. Then he mentioned 3 other kingdoms. And a stone hewed out of the mountain is the kingdom of God. And that kingdom struck at the foot because it was weak, iron mixed with clay. And it said that the image fell down and broke into pieces and was consumed by this stone. And it became a mountain and filled the entire earth. Boy. I can tell you straight up, America, you will never be the same again. England will never be the same again. France, Italy, these kingdoms are going to be consumed. And what will consume them? Not armies, says in the Quran that he it is who sent his messenger with the guidance and the true religion, that he may make it overcome the religions, all of them, though the polytheists may be adverse. Islam is to consume America. Islam is to consume England. Islam is to consume Europe. And these great kings that have ruled and decimated the earth will one day become servants of God or be destroyed from the face of the earth. One more prophecy. Isaiah's 2nd chapter. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it, and many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Now, beloved, if God is going to establish his house in the last days in the top of the mountain, mountain here represents nation, government. Who is at the top of the mountains? Come on. Who is the only remaining superpower? Is this not the top? You can't get no higher than America. Well, what does the prophet say? God will establish his house in the top of the mountain. Don't care what you think or what the ruling powers think. God has the power to do what he wills. And it will take Allah to establish his house inside this house. So whether you know it or not, I have a duty by Islam. I have a duty and an obligation to my Arab, Muslim, Christian, and Jewish brethren. You may misunderstand and think that I've abandoned you because I have a duty by them. I have a duty by Africa. I have a duty by the Asians. I have a duty by the Native Americans. I have a duty by the Hispanics. And I also have a duty by the whites. And I have a duty by the government of the United States of America as a warner to them. And you can believe it or not, you have the same duty that I have. But you that don't live in America, what is your duty? What is the duty of the nations of the earth outside of America? You got a duty. What is your duty, China? What is your duty, Asia? What is your duty, Africa? What is your duty? You all have a duty and an obligation to help us in the West. The Jews, the Christians, the people of the book, you have that duty, and I must point it out to you. The Quran teaches, and when Allah made a covenant through the prophets, certainly what I have given you of book and wisdom, then a messenger comes to you, verifying that which is with you, you shall believe in him, you shall aid him. Allah said, do you affirm and accept my compact in this matter? And they said, we do affirm. Allah said, then bear witness. And I too am the bearers of witness with you, and whoever turns back after this, these are the transgressors. Seek they then other than Allah's religion? You know what this is saying? Every nation on this earth has received a prophet. Otherwise, the Quran has lied. Then if every nation received a prophet, then Allah took a covenant with the people of that nation through their prophet, that when that one comes to you verifying what is with you, and every one of you today will hear me speaking to you in your own language, out of your own book. Whatever you believe, this is a whole hemisphere that has never heard the word of Allah. Talk to me, Muslims. How are you going to tell me that a whole hemisphere never heard the message of Allah and then dare to tell me that a messenger should not be raised who will be a messenger of the message of the prophet? This Quran has to be taught. And you are not the ones to do it. Allah never raises up somebody among the people unless they speak the language of that people. It's wonderful that you know the Arabic language. I wish I knew it. One day I will learn it. I can't read Arabic. I can't write Arabic. Neither can the people of America. So all the Arabic that you know is not going to help you transmit the message of the Holy Quran to them unless you can meet them in their language and understand the mentality of America. That is the job of Imam Warithuddin Muhammad and myself. We have that mission in America. And nobody can take that from us. Go, my friends. Look in your Quran. Look in your Bible. We are fulfilling what is written in the Torah, what is found in the gospel, and the wisdom of the prophecies in the Quran is being fulfilled in the West, in the West, in the West. And we are that people, and you are to help us in this mission. we need your help. We need your help. But you can't guide us. We would go to hell if we let you guide us. I'm sorry. You don't know how to guide us to wake up the man in America. That's not your job. Your job is to help those of us whom Allah has guided and given that message. Allah is with you. You are with me together. Whoa, brother. Alhamdulillah. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. In Surat Al-Abasa, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was talking to a highly learned man. And a blind man was tapping his way up to the Holy Prophet. And he disturbed the Prophet as he was talking to this highly placed man. And the Prophet looked at him and frowned. And Allah frowned. And Allah said to the Prophet in this verse of Quran that he revealed, in other words, you're wasting your time with the people that will take up your time but will not pay attention to your message. But here's a blind man tapping his way up to you, and on him you frown, and upon him you turn away. You are so busy in Europe. You are so busy with the intellectuals of America. You don't have time for the little blind man in the ghettos of America who are tapping their way up to the Holy Prophet of Islam. On us you frown and you turn away. We don't smell right. We don't act right. We don't look right. We don't talk right. But in us, Almighty God, Allah has brought us through the fire. He's brought us through turbulation and tribulation and suffering. And He's made of us a new heart. A heart that bleeds for the suffering of all of humanity, but a heart that needs to be purified. We need your help. Don't turn away from us. America, you are the power in the world. America, you are the top of the mountain. But He said He would establish His kingdom right at the top of the mountain in you. It would be separate from you, but yet it would be in you, but not of you. Not a part of your racist spirit. Not a part of your spirit of white supremacy. Not a part of your spirit of degeneracy. Not a part of your drug-consuming society. You would see this kingdom as a stranger. You would seek to destroy it, but in it, there would be great benefit for you. America, there's great benefit in Islam for you. Right now, you are on your way, even though you're at the top. Babylon and Sodom and Gomorrah. You're great and you're powerful, but you are no match for the power of Allah. He can send rain and you can't move.